Rick Wilson,
Dear God, that took a long fucking time.
it was the longest one of those ever. We're not calling it a State of the Union because why aren't we calling it that? Because it's too close to he's only been president for 6 weeks, so you're not allowed to call it a State of the Union. We
Right.
just
It's
call
a
it
joint session of Congress.
right. We'll just
Um,
call it our crashed economy.
it really is. I don't know if you've heard about these things. It's called tariffs. They're his favorite word. It's a big, beautiful word, and it's his
Trade
fourth
wars are
favorite word in the
good
world. And
and
they're
easy
already
to
doing so
win.
great. They're making us so rich, and
Um,
it's insane.
Trump hit 1 hour, 30 minutes, making it the longest State of the Union address in joint address of Congress in history.
Yeah.
Longer than people who are better orators.
You know, here's the thing. It was Castro-esque in length. It was von Munchausen in content. And I think people are going to walk away from it going, the fuck did I just listen to? Because look, an awful lot of it was like, K-Tel's greatest lies of the 1990s and 2000s. It's
Right.
like all the culture war stuff, all the there are social security recipients who are 300 years old.
Right. A
It
lot
was
of
such
stuff
a
that had
giant
been debunked.
bucket
Yeah.
of bullshit. And look, nobody walked out of that speech tonight. Um, Nobody walked out of that speech tonight and said, wow, that was a brilliant rhetorical construction, and I totally changed my mind about Donald Trump.
No.
And most people watching that speech tonight were thinking it's the same shit. And by the way, fucko, Joe Biden's not president anymore and hasn't been for a few months now. And so, it's on you now, Chief. You're not, he's up. I think he mentioned Biden. I was initially keeping track of it. I think he talked about Biden 6 or 7 times at least during the speech, maybe more. I don't know. But it struck me how weirdly defensive it was in a lot of places.
I thought that sometimes with his speeches, I've thought, wow, this is really like, remember the Fire and Fury speech of 2016, where I thought, oh, wow, this is really, as to quote George W. Bush, some weird
Some
shit.
weird shit.
With this, it was like the construction was very showman, right? So you'd have a person and he'd bring him out. He'd say, this child, this poor kid has childhood cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and had been treated, by the way, at that, famous childhood cancer hospital, that doesn't charge you, that takes
Right.
money from the NIH.
St. Jude's or whatever it was.
St.
Right.
Jude's. So, St. Jude's will be cut under the new Elon Musk efficiency budget. So, okay, and they're gonna work on childhood cancer, but they're cutting all the environmental regulations because they have to cut regulation because of capitalism. So so the idea here is that this kid has cancer, but we're going to cut the funding for research for cancer, and we're going to cut the funding for environmental regulations, and but please look at this kid because we got him. He's going to, I mean, it just was like there were so many instances of like, this is the freest, speechiest, free speechy, speechified freely,
I
speech
felt very
ever.
free after.
Right. But then it was like, but don't look up any of the stuff about what we do when you say stuff we don't like.
Right. Don't conceive for a moment that we won't have you thrown out of the chamber if you
Right.
object to the speech.
Very,
Don't
very
think for a
free
moment that
speechy.
he's not naughty and winking the several times to Cash Patel and Pam Bondi of, you're gonna have you go get him. You could
Right.
see a lot of this entire structure tonight, I think, came down to, look, this was not a speechwriter speech. This is a Trump speech. He wrote this speech, or at least told people what
Stephen
he
Miller,
wanted
right?
in the speech. I don't, but let me rephrase it. I don't think he wrote it. I think he told people what he wanted.
Right.
And it was a mess. The whole thing was just a mess.
But it
And
was
and
very, very
the
long.
densely packed lies, if lies were like nuclear material, they would have been compressed so densely that they would have reached a criticality and exploded. It was, I mean, look, saying it was Trump's most mendacious speech ever is a high bar, but it was
Right.
up there.
Well, they're all like that. The thing that I mean, the real democracy, true democracy. I mean, there were a
Mhm.
lot of like, we're gonna, redefine words. What do they mean? Real 1984 kind of stuff. I mean, that's to be expected. I mean, the guy feels very emboldened, but what I sort of was surprised by was he also seemed kind of tired.
Yeah, he was not super high energy tonight.
Yeah.
He was not super high energy, and I think we've talked about this in the past. There is a certain cadence Trump gets when he's reading off the prompter. And we will pass a tax cut that will make millions
Right.
of Americans so much more money than you've ever seen before. It will be nothing anyone's ever seen ever because we will make so much money. And it just was sort of
You get
boring.
sort of bored when he
And
has to read
I
against
do
the
think even for
prompter.
some of the Republicans in the audience who were doing what I call the Saddam rule, which is never be the first guy in the audience to stop clapping, never be the first guy to stop clapping. They were doing the Saddam rule, but there were some of the things he was saying that no one in that audience believed were true. Oh, the
Right.
markets are doing great and interest rates are plunging and everything's going fine and we've done so much in such a small amount of time that's so good. No one was
Any
buying that. Any of these guys
right,
who
I
went home
mean,
for a town hall meeting, they weren't buying that shit. Any of these guys
well
who read a newspaper, they weren't buying any of it.
well, if anyone who looks at the Dow Jones, which is Trump too, right, knows that it's given back all its gains.
Yep.
So I think the question really is sort of how long he can keep this kind of I don't know, is it Mussolini? I mean, who is the autocrat who says everything it's sunny when it's raining? I mean, who is the
Well, I mean, look,
template for that?
I mean, I jokingly said this earlier. A lot of it was sort of Baron von Munchausen. He was almost testing people to see how many lies they would believe tonight
Yeah.
because the speech was piled so high, and my staff folks were following it, and they're like, we know you wanted us to fact check this, but we're already at like 150 lies an hour in to the 17-hour speech, and
Right.
it just struck me as even his own people, yeah, they're clapping in the room, but the cognitive dissonance is a pretty far gap in this speech. There was a lot of I'm the best, I'm the greatest. They all expect that from Trump, but there was also a lot of like outright lies, and they knew it, and they couldn't. They know they can't sell a lot of these things.
Right. No, no. I mean, they can't. And quite frankly, I mean, what is interesting is that he's sort of like he knows what he's supposed to pretend to care about, right? So
Sure,
clean air,
veterans,
not
childhood
right,
cancer.
right. So as he's cutting these things, he's pretending he cares about them. And I would say that is, in a way, the most interesting part. Also, the kind of showmanship we saw. So we had MTG in a MAGA hat. This is now her thing. She wears a MAGA hat. We had the sort of the crew of, the Trump children, the every sort of Melania. I mean, we had the whole sort of typical
Melania was a different
Trumpy.
color tonight.
She has been tanning with him, or they've been bronzing together.
The family that bronzes together stays together is what they
Yeah,
say, and
it's
so
that's right. They share a bronzer. They share one bronzer
Donald,
together.
I will now use the tanning bed.
Yeah. I don't think any of that is occurring naturally. I think that's just all orange powder caked up.
Mm.
And actually, one of my kids who I was watching it with was we were like he was like, maybe it is real. And I was like, if your skin and your scalp is one color and your face is radically different, then it
Yeah.
is not real.
That is not real. No, definitely not a real thing. But look, I mean, I think you saw a lot of the performative, as I said, like the Saddam rule, the clapping, the yelling, the rah rah for Trump. He's watching. He expects all that. They know he expects all that. But even Trump was admitting tonight with things like the tariffs, like, oh, there'll be some dislocation, there'll be some brief
Right.
trial. I think those clips are going to come back to bite him so hard because unless, as Howard Lutnick was hinting today, he's going to bail
Right.
on the
That they're
tariffs
gonna, which do
tomorrow.
you think that's possible? I mean, that was some Howard Lutnick is doing some three-dimensional chess here. We may do it, we may not do it, we might not do it at all.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think Trump doesn't give a shit about public opinion, but I think he cares a lot about what the market does.
Right.
And the market has been crippling for the last 2 days. It's been punishing him for the last 2 days, rightly so. And I kind of felt like some of the speech tonight might have been calibrated a bit, like threw in more like rah optimistic bullshit that
Right.
you know you and I both know was crap. It's like things like, oh, so many new car factories are already being built.
Right. No, I know. There was tons of new car factories. That was pretty amazing. Um, so I want you to sort of do a second or two on the Democratic pushback. Was it the right stuff that Democrats did? You had a couple of different things. You had Al Green,
Yeah.
who I want to remind everyone, Al Green tried to impeach Donald Trump on like, I think it was like January 31st, 2017, right? So he was remember Nancy was like, "No," and he was
Right.
like, "Yes." I think maybe February 3rd, he was already doing impeachment. So Al Green has been hot to trot for a long time.
Look,
You had
I always have this memory of MTG and Boebert screaming like a pair of
Ray
fucking
screaming.
hyenas
Yeah.
at Joe Biden, and I'm just like, so like if the decorum thing is the thing, then you don't wear a baseball hat on the floor of the House.
Right.
You don't get to sit there as a screamer and a ranter once upon a
So,
time and now
but
be sort of the picture propriety. All
but
those things are
let's just pause for a second. What worked? So Al Green didn't really work. People wearing pink didn't really work. What worked? I thought the little signs
not
that where
bad,
they
not
held
bad.
it up when he was lying.
Yeah.
And then I thought
And
Elizabeth
Elon
Warren on
steals.
her
I thought that was a
phone.
really interesting message, but I think it actually works given
Yeah.
some of the polling we're seeing. People do not like that guy.
No.
People
I'm
are not
shocked
happy about
that
Elon
the
Musk.
nefarious billionaire who models himself on a Bond villain is not even from here
Right.
is not more popular.
Yeah. Imagine a South African Bond villain who, uses his who uses
His
his
richest man in the
superpowers
world.
superpowers to fire weathermen and veteran
Yes.
suicide counselors and
Yeah, take money from children's cancer.
right. Yeah.
So
So
here, so the question is, I also thought maybe Bernie just looking on and very displeased was a good. I mean, I thought he did well. I mean, the question is
yeah.
like, do you go? Do you not go? Ultimately, was it better just not to go?
Yeah, I think sitting through the show was probably unnecessary.
Yeah,
And a lot of Trump's speech was built around like, "Oh, you won't cheer for America.
right.
You
Yeah, I
hate
saw a
America."
lot of that.
Um,
Yes.
I think if I'd been counseling the Democrats, I think I would have sent a delegation of people, but but
But
look, I don't think the stunt
s-
stuff works anymore.
so
Pink, white signs. I mean,
Manu Raju, who works for CNN, said, I've been in the House chamber for for a lot of speeches,
sure,
have not seen an opposition party mount a protest like tonight. House and Senate Democratic leaders, and I think we couldn't see this because we weren't in it,
right.
didn't join the escort committee for the president. They turned their backs on him when he entered the chamber. They didn't shake his hand. They didn't applaud virtually anything. Several walked out in the middle of the speech, lots of signs in the back being held up. Dem members repeated shouts of lies and you're lying. A Dem member, Al Green, was exported out. Dem leaders endorsed the no applause strategy. but Jeffries and his deputies urged members against signs, props, and loud outbursts.
Well, look, I think turning your back on someone as they enter the room is one of the oldest
Yeah.
pieces of political symbolism you can engage in a public
Yeah.
forum. And that is that I think that was a good move. I think it says something. And I think it also, it may have actually rattled Trump. He was trying to
Right.
work the Democrats. Yeah. Did you notice the same
Yeah.
thing?
Well,
He was
I
trying to
just
work the
know what
crowd.
it's like to give a speech, and when you feel like they're not with you, even if you know it's a friendly group, it gets really rattling.
Mhm.
Like, so I wondered, and it makes more sense now, all of his stuff where he kept being like, they're not gonna chap, they're not gonna applaud, they're not gonna, like, I kept wondering why he was so stuck on that, and that would make a lot of sense.
I think we've sort of I think yeah. And I think that idea of Trump in his head of I'm president, they're going to clap for me no matter what. I deserve it. I
Yeah.
own this. I'm the boss. I think all of that has a sort of for him, not getting what he wants in that space is really hurtful to him. He's going to
Yeah.
stew on this. He's going to hate this. He's going to be mad about it. He's going to be thinking to himself, you know, they disrespected me. I deserve better. I'm going to punish them, you know. But I do think the best night of the best moment of the night was I don't know which member it was, but as Trump was walking down the aisle, someone held up a sign that said, "This is not normal."
Yeah. You know who that was?
And
Melanie sorry, go on.
I thought that was really I liked that seeing that moment because this guy went in there with no intention of unification or communication with the rest of America. It was just about he was gonna go in there and own the libs, and he was gonna be a clown. He was gonna do his thing, and he did. And some of it went on so long, like 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 this is not normal. Really spoke to me about this whole event.
So the woman who held up the "This is not normal" sign is a woman called Melanie Stansbury. She is from New Mexico.
Mhm.
She is the ranking member on Doge, which you'll remember the chair of Doge is one MAGA hat wearing Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Mhm.
So one of the things that Stansbury has had to do, and I think she's done it actually quite well, she's had to sort of be the sane one on that committee while still. And so I did think that was absolutely the right tone to hit, because it was like it was not, it was somewhat disrespectful, but it was not, it's still, I thought it struck me as more appropriate than a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was my favorite moment. Um, and look, I think the temptation in all this is to overprocess it and overthink it
Yeah.
because very few people remember any response to a State of the Union or a joint address.
Yeah.
You remember the performance of the president, Republican or Democrat, and I think Trump's performance was. I don't think it was a great. When Trump has the ability to perform at a different level,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
But
this was
you
not that
see,
level.
but you saw the P.T. Barnum, you saw the showman. But
Sure.
the most important thing about this is that we have now lost another hour and a half of our lives watching Donald Trump give a speech. And as I've sat through so many of these speeches, I immediately thought to myself, oh, here we go again. Another.
Yes, another fucking death march through Donald Trump's weird brain, and it
Yes.
was. I mean, and by the way, my favorite tweet of the night was a scientist who was involved in this study. He said, "I wish I could explain to them that transgenic mice are not transsexual mice, but how could you?"
Rick Wilson, transgenic
Pleasure as
mice.
always.
Those are not transsexual mice.
These are transgenic, not transsexual.